Hello and welcome to this game review. So yeah, here we had a couple of interesting moments. So we got this hedgehog type of position, and recently, yeah, it is actually possible to play something like g4 and attack on the king side. White even castles queen side in such positions. And this pawn on c4, even though it is kind of a hook for black to play b5, the engine says that realistically black can't really ever play b5 as there's just so many pieces here. The king can go to b1 and the white is just taking space all over the board. So this is an extremely ambitious way to play. It might backfire, but it might also give a quick win for white. So I've seen this before, but this is the more standard way to play. And here white kind of has to decide on what plan he's going to undertake. Generally, in all of them, the queen goes to d2, the pawn goes to f3, and etc. And then it has to white has to decide if you're putting this rook on c1 or this one. It all depends on where you want to play, either with f4 and something there, or with a4 and something there. So here rook c1 is played, which kind of means white wants to play on the king side. Usually something like this happens. Rook fc1, let's say f3, and black and white basically has a little bit more useful moves. And at some point you can start expanding the main plan. On the queen side is c5, but also an idea is to play a5 and recapture with the knight here to isolate this pawn on a6 and make it a weakness in the long term. But okay, in the game this is all fine. a3, bishop b7, knight b7, and yeah, f4 is possible. It does weaken the pawn on e4, so positionally it's not really desirable, but it is important to note that black is not in time to attack the pawn. For example, after this, white can play b4, and black is not in time to play knight c5 to create real problems for this pawn. More interestingly, even g4 is actually even stronger, apparently, and white can just go ahead and attack. Okay, a3, bishop b7, all of this is possible. And here, white plays queen b3, but the queen is not particularly well placed here. The main plan here is to play c5 usually, so knight b3 is often a move. The queen can go to d2, sometimes something like bishop d4 and queen e3 happens. Some more useful moves are king h1, bishop g1, rook e1, bishop f1. If white has all the time in the world, he usually does this. So queen b3, kf d1, and g3. So here you understood that bishop c7 is coming. And at some point, if black successfully pulls off d5, then h2 will be hanging. And this is a valid concern. A very kind of topical way to deal with this is king h1 and bishop g1. Here, both the pieces are improved. White did not have to weaken his kingside structure. And next, even bishop f1 is a useful move, which eventually guards g2 from something like this. And the bishop is not very useful on e2. Also, it gives the rooks more space to walk around, and the knights as well can retreat if needed. And generally, white keeps control over the situation, and he's slightly better. But after g3, black eventually has this plan of playing h5, which happens in the game, and now white has a slight problem on the g3 square. Still, white is kind of okay if he finds good counterplay on the queen side. And here you wanted to know why queen a2 is preferred. And I don't like either of these moves, as I'm not sure what exactly the point would be. But I would assume queen a2 has some ideas of guarding the king side, as well as simply putting the queen back in the center on d2 where it belonged after all. Instead of moving the queen all the way to the corner of the board, the queen is probably better on d2. Maybe eventually g5 is a weak square to consider, where it might be quite annoying to get out of. And after queen e3, what the queen does here is attacks d6, but I don't think there's many variations where that is important. So h4, king g2, and black plays queen a8, which kind of hints at taking on e4, which happened in the game. But if black had played knight h5, this seems a lot more annoying, because now black has the simple idea of taking and playing d5, and whatever white wins in the center, black will compensate by taking on g3, which would ruin white's king position. This queen is out of play a little bit, And the white's play on the queen side is not as significant because the king is a bigger prize. For example, if we, let's say, waste a move, black can take, play d5, and sure, this pawn will hang somehow, but after bishop g3, black is winning as this king is way too weak. But queen a8, and black finds the wrong plan and takes on e4, which wasn't really necessary. Here, black should just save his bishop. If white wants to take here, he can, but now it turns out that the rook on d6 is not very well placed because this allows knight e4. And also a small nuance, after this there's knight e5. So this diagonal turns out to be quite weak. So this is quite a difficult operation, so to say, but sacrificing on e4 was not very accurate, and here white did very well to defend. Even though black's attack looks a bit scary, he does not really have enough. And after some accurate moves, white picks up the pawn, exchanges some pieces, improves the queen, and finds this nice combination, after which we are winning. So probably the point of queen a2 was to finally retreat the queen back to d2, where it should have gone in the first place. As on b3, it's kind of on the queen side, but it's not really helping in any variations. This square is usually reserved for the knight, so that we can play our typical pawn break, which is c5.